So I've heard you use that phrase, chicken dinners. So this was a traditional event in order to network and basically have cooked chicken. I'm just trying to think about how this translates beyond America.
Those were typically, a political candidate with a speech with some stale chicken on there, and you listen to a bunch of boring speeches.
So do you not eat chicken anymore, Lon? I mean, are you done?
What chicken?
You're done.
You've been put off the chicken.
Yeah, the internet changed all that.
Well, welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarni, a water strategy consultant, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And today we're pleased to be joined by Lon Johnson, who's the founder and CEO of WaterWorks, an online investment platform. Lon, good to see you, and great to see you rocking the Hawaiian shirt still as we venture into autumn.
Well, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Will. Thanks for having me on.
Lon got the memo.
The dress code is on point. Well, yes. I'd say, Lon, normally we kind of have a rule of thumb, right, Will? We say we don't tend to bring too much politics into the stream. We tend to keep it politics free. However, I think for this one, we can maybe make a bit of an exception in terms of your origin story. Because I think in terms of to get to where you are today, in terms of the WaterWorks, an online investing platform, we need to kind of look a bit of your history and you for the Democrat Party in terms of working under Al Gore, working with Obama, and in terms of helping to change fundraising and investing to a digital experience. So talk us a bit about through that and how you kind of came to found WaterWorks, if you will.
Sure. Well, thank you, Tom. And as you said, WaterWorks we're an online investing platform where companies or projects seeking capital can come to and meet investors seeking opportunity in the water sector. And really this is just an extension of what my co-founder and wife, Juliana Smoot, have done our entire lives. And that is help to bring capital to entities or in our instance was candidates. We spent, many years helping to raise capital, raising contributions for candidates. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was really an analog process. It was PACs and lobbyists and event-driven processes that brought capital to either parties or candidates or causes. And then, around 03, 04, 05, this new thing called the internet came along. And, we helped lead and pioneer moving that from that insider event exclusive process to an inclusive and digital process. I remember, when some of the pioneers came to us and we're talking about, raising money online, we thought it just didn't make any sense. What do you mean, going after $20, $10, $5 on the internet? How does that work? Remember when we were looking at in the beginning stages, this was, people were hosting events and raising $250,000 at a time, or PACs were given a $5,000 check. Going after an individual investor or a contributor for $5 made 0 sense. But what the internet does is it helps to bring together and aggregate people of common interest and gives them a go do. And where those $5 or $10 or $20 start to add up. And before you know it, you're able to move the needle in a way and compete against those analog methods. So we helped, move that. And obviously my wife, more than me, she was Barack Obama's 2008 finance director, later went on to serve in the White House with him. And it helps when you have, lightning in a bottle like President Obama in a digital world. But, we're seeing the result of that in politics. Today, that's how these campaigns, both at the local and to the presidential level, raise substantial amounts of their money. So, we saw that same process occur and live through that process in politics. And we think that same process could help innovative water technology companies or projects also raise capital. So we investigated it, and we talked to quite a few leaders in the water industry. Will was one of the early ones that we spoke to, and we felt that online investing that was made allowable by the Jobs Act in 2012 could help address some of the unique water problems that we have.
Okay, so turning analog to digital from politics, moving it into water. And what have you sort of then, speaking with Will and speaking to other experts, where do you see this kind of having a place amongst existing investment mechanisms within the water space?
I'll let Will address part of that. But look, water is forever. Water is a very fragmented marketplace. Water is drawn locally, it's processed locally, it's distributed locally, it's put back into a local watershed. So that makes a very fragmented ecosystem. And a lot of the technologies or projects they're small, they're local, they're bespoke, they're one-off, which are not necessarily a target or a candidate for financing from your traditional financing mechanisms, venture capital or private equity. And so, that fragmentation is a real, there's a market imperfection there. We're believers at WaterWorks that we're not doom and gloomers here. We believe there is enough fresh water for everyone, and we believe that there is terrific technology coming up that can help address scarcity or infrastructure failure. But too often, those technologies or those projects have a harder time raising capital than somebody else or some other industry, making a widget. For all the reasons that we talked about, it's very small or fragmented. So this process of financing, the Jobs Act helps us take an investment offering and put it up online, and then allow that offering to broadcast their finance need on a nationwide basis to other like-minded souls.
Lon, you and I have had no shortage of conversations about what you're doing and the water sector and so on. It just struck me listening to you talk about this move from analog to digital. And, Tom and I and our colleagues talk about the digital transformation of the water sector. And we also talk about democratizing access to data and, safe drinking water and so on. And what you're doing fits nicely in a very interesting way into those two big trends that I guess I knew, but hearing you say it, it's like the piece is locked up perfectly, in that you are now part of this digital transformation of water, just like IoT and AI and Earth observation technologies and so on, and also democratizing access to data, actionable information, and now online financing, investing rather. So I find that really fascinating and powerful in its simplicity, because it fits in nicely to a couple of the big trends in a way that we don't really talk about that much. We talk about the technology.
Yeah, and the practical practical implications of that problem. Let's just presume you came up with a water widget that's helping a community save capital, save water, and save money and time. But your investment needs are relatively small compared, to other industries. Maybe you need to raise $500,000 or $1 million, and so you go knocking on traditional finance doors, venture capital, private equity doors, and again, that capital oftentimes is too small to gain interest from larger firms. So where do you go? And so, one way to address that would be to consider raising capital online. That gives you the ability to take your offering, in short, and there's a number of processes here, but to take your offering and to put it online and to broadcast it to both your own networks and to nationwide networks to attempt to raise capital through online means. Now, online investing is growing. It started out in 2016 with 61,000. This is all according to Crowdfund Capital Advisors, which is an industry industry monitor, helps put out data. And according to them, it started out in the first year started out with 61,000 investors and brought on about 56 million in capital. In the last fiscal year of it, the fourth year, it hit 265,000 investors were brought on to raise 138 million. So that's some growth there. And so, look, we believe at WaterWorks, whatever the internet touches wins. The internet wins. And so we're increasingly going to a digital world where, we believe these millennial investors are becoming accustomed to financial transactions online, doing their own research. And we want to put water investments in front of them. Stepping back, what WaterWorks really is doing is helping to merge three trends: online investing, sustainable investing, with water finance demand.
So run me through how it works, because I saw this documentary the other day on Netflix, right? It's called Print the Legend. It's about 3D printing. And there was one innovative company there, and it was talking about raising enough capital to build this 3D printer to roll it out across the masses, right? And part of the offering was if they use the online investing platform, or otherwise known as crowdfunding, the first people to sign up would get a prototype of that particular 3D printing machine. They would have a stake in the company. There's quite a few different benefits, right? So you mentioned if a company uses this platform, they're developing a sensor or a widget. How does that translate into water tech? Do people get ownership of the company? Do they, they might not want to get the water widget or sensor themselves. So what do they actually get when you're talking about the democratized access to not only providing funds and capital? What do people get back by investing?
Sure. So broadly, crowdfunding, if you will, really falls into three different categories. There's donation-based crowdfunding, where you're contributing money with no expectation of any return. So it's a charity-driven operation.
Sure.
There's the rewards-based, which sounds like what you were describing, where if you contribute money, you will then get some type of product or service back for that. And what we're focused on is called equity crowdfunding, where an investor is going to a site, reviewing the terms of the investment that has been offered up by the issuing company, and then making a decision from that website whether or not to invest. Now, that could be either a debt or an equity offering. And within that, there's, as we all know, there's quite a few different types of offerings within debt or equity. So essentially what you're doing is you're making an investment in your either a debt or an equity investment into that company, and you're becoming an investor into that company.
So it's ownership of the company is the equity, essentially. Yeah.
That's, again, one of the terms, it all boils down to what are the terms of that company's offering.
Sure.
Is it debt? Is it equity? So it could be ownership. Yes.
Very cool. I noticed on your website you used the word community. So, and I think community is really important. I see a lot of people using the word. They want to create a community. So why did you use that word? I mean, do you see obviously we talked about water being a wicked problem. It's an innovation riddle because we have this enormous problem to solve, as part of Sustainable Development Goal number 6, access to clean water and sanitation for all by 2030. There is innovation. It's not just about the tech, it's about the frameworks, about the collaboration needed. So why a community?
Community, look, the internet's a big place. And what we're trying to do is to gather like-minded souls, the same way that the three of us here are talking, or the people that will later go on to watch this. That's a community. And what we're trying to do is together gather people who care about water. We don't think we're alone in that fact. who see water as an important component to our society, but also want to invest into potential solutions, into innovation in that space. We're all in the water world. We're all used to these conventions, right? It seems like every weekend there's some sort of convention going on. I've walked the floors of those conventions, and and that's a community. But what we in the water world have to understand is that those conventions, there's a water convention, so to speak, going on every hour online, where people can come together and decide either individually or collectively to support one effort or another. And, I'll end it on the community side on this. Again, another thing that many of us in the water world have gone to, we've gone to these different accelerators, and there's typically 5 to 7 companies that are giving a pitch and they're asking for, investment consideration. These are terrific companies that I've seen do this. They've got a pitch deck that's, stellar, ready to take off to the finance houses of New York. And they're talking to maybe 100 people in that audience. But the law and technology now allow us to take that same offering and put it up online and to drive and put it out before a nationwide pool of potential investors.
Lon, how do you think online investing will impact more traditional vehicles for investing, like private equity, VCs, SRI funds, beyond the obvious, which is, this is just one more menu option? I mean, do you see innovation in how they think about investing in the water sector as online investing gains traction and grows? It's a little bit of a speculation, but you've been in the private equity world for a while too. So what's your take? Tom and I always talk about, we're trying to not blow up the status quo, but challenge the status quo to do things better. So feel free to opine.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Tom said earlier. Not that I don't like what you say, Will.
I like you, Lon. Yeah, keep saying things like that, please. Yeah.
I'm just going to drop off this gallery view right now, I think.
I like what he said. Look, we're creating a community of people with a bias for action. And look, I think COVID has really accelerated the world's adoption and comfort with digital. And when you start to look at the core functions of a venture capital fund or the core functions of a private equity fund, what they raise capital, and then they go invest in ways that they've told the people they raise that money from. And so parts of the components there of running a fund is finding good investment opportunities and then deploying that capital. And then depending on the structure of that investment is, working with that company to grow it. The internet is changing how companies can raise capital, and the law has changed what types of company can raise capital and what types of investors can raise capital. What type of investors can invest. Now, when you look at traditional venture capital and private equity, it is it's primarily accredited investors. And so when you look at the demographic of that audience, it's primarily over the age of 60, primarily men, and primarily white. But the law now says a company can raise, an investor can, non-accredited investors, retail investors can now invest into privately held companies. So it changes who that audience is. And so as that adoption starts to increase, there's going to be new pools of capital from all sources of type of investors. And those private equity or venture capital funds either will address that new market or they'll sit on the sidelines and that market will go somewhere else. You can look at what's happening to online investing and ignore it. Or you can look at it and address it and engage in that. And that's what we've chosen to do. What we've chose to do is to look at this marketplace and and say, hey, you know what, take a look at water innovation. And we think that there's a segment of that population that will respond positively.
I shared some news the other day. It was about the water footprint assessment tool, and they were using a internet funding vehicle or crowdfunding, Indiegogo, to raise money to then take their software solution to the next stage. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe this is the start of hopefully more alternative creative ways of finance. And do you think, what about the speed of gathering the amount of investment needed through the online investment platform? Is that something that comes into play here? Because some of the accelerators I speak to, they talk about whether it's VC or private equity, the speed to delay and look for return on investment can be the thing holding up investments. So from what you're saying, this is, if I've developed a widget or a solution to then use the online platform to then go and get it funded, it's accessible, and perhaps the speed of deployment is fairly quick as well, would you say?
Yeah. So you're talking about commercialization or how quick. So if you have a widget that's addressing the needs of a particular community, and you fly off to New York or Chicago or San Francisco to attempt to get venture capital, there's a time and cost equation to that. What we're seeing at WaterWorks is you can put your investment up and engage and build from the community that's directly affected, and engage those as potential investors. And again, the internet doesn't work. It's not like as if you put up an offering and people throw money at you. You have to go out there and you have to organize, and you have to make sure that communities of investors, potential investors, see your offering. But in one way, on the local side of this, which water, is one of the challenges on the local side, if you can go to potential investors that are affected by that local problem and say, here's a solution, but here's a potential solution, and here's a way for you to invest and be part of that, you're building a team of advocates, potential advocates for your company. While venture capital, yes, may be able to help and guide you on the management level, online investing allows you to build a potential armies of advocates and evangelicals about your product. If you were to raise $1 million, for an example, at $1,000 an investment, you now have 1,000 people that you can draw upon for either potential second or third financing rounds, or for helping you to introduce to get your product deployed. You're building your own army, and how you use that army is entirely up to you.
So Lon, this is another attribute is speed. I mean, you talked about, the time sink of, traveling around or even doing it online, pitching investors of, different flavors. What digital online offers is broad access, 24/7 if needed, to raise capital to grow the business and help scale it. So it's the digital, it's the speed piece that's really unique in the marketplace.
Yeah, again, I keep coming. I don't want to keep going political here, but when candidates realize they don't have to do the chicken dinner, or they don't have to do the backyard barbecue, and they can raise money via email and social media posts, that's an accelerant to their organization. Anytime your candidate can go out and meet voters instead of having to spend 2 hours, at a backyard barbecue, that's time, that's time gained. And right. What we think here, looking at it in the same lens, a water startup, time is precious to water innovators. And if they can raise capital through emails, through digital means, that is that allows them to raise that capital and get back to what they're trying to do.
So I've heard you use that phrase "chicken dinners" before, right? So for the non-US listening, what do you mean by? So this was a traditional event in order to network and basically have cooked chicken I'm just trying to think about how this translates beyond America, right? This is people having dinner together and fundraising in the process.
Oh, that's right.
Writing checks is a very manual, analog process, right? So just explain this whole chicken dinner thing, please.
So, when you raise capital, there's a time element involved, whether it's for politics or a business or for a charity. You've got to organize and do something now in order to present your offering, if you will, to a potential investor, be it, again, a charity, a business, or a political campaign. And look, those things take time and resources away from an organization's core function. And so if you have to, if you're already putting together a pitch deck, if you're already putting together, Zoom calls, what this allows you to do from a time perspective is to drive traffic to your offering page to allow them to review it, instead of having to get on a plane and fly out, and make your pitch to one person. You now can go online and broadcast it to a potential, a nationwide investor pool. Individual investors, a big change in this law. The investor pool is anyone over the age of 18 can potentially invest into these offerings. So, organizing and finding them online can be a time saver versus flying off and doing, a series of meetings, maybe doing 4 or 5 meetings, of which, maybe one will, get back to you. So you may have the same failure rate, but you now can go out there and, instead of asking 5 people and getting a 25% success rate, you're asking potentially 20,000. And you may get only a 5% success rate, but it's a lessening of your time and your organization's time and resources. But back to the chicken dinners, those were typically, a political candidate with a speech with some stale chicken on there, and you listen to a bunch of boring speeches.
So do you not eat chicken anymore, Lon? I mean, are you done?
What chicken?
You're done.
You've been put off the chicken.
Yeah, the internet changed all that. But there are some chicken dinners still. There's some, but there's quite a fewer of them now than there was in the past.
Probably a good thing.
There is an expression in the UK, winner, chicken dinner. So I'm guessing you shouldn't probably use that as part of your communication if you're digitalizing chicken dinners, right? But I think
focused on the US investment.
Yeah. But I think this is interesting because obviously one part of this is to use the platform. The other part you mentioned, rather than going to the same pool of investors, you're opening up access to a much broader audience. So it's down to that organization to then use digital tools to communicate and publicize it as widely as possible. And I think this taps into digital as well. I gave a short presentation to British Water a couple of weeks ago, a UK association, about content and communication. And now tools such as social media, telecommunication tools such as Zoom, anybody can put together a webinar. It's not like traditional modes of print and media publishing where it's just focused on single companies, and people are relying on a print magazine for news. Anybody has access to these amazing tools. So I think that ties into probably part of this as well, right?
Yeah, disintermediation.
Yeah.
And Tom, anyone can put on a podcast now. Right?
Anybody. There's no vetting it. There's no quality standard. There's no quality control.
Look who they let in to the podcast world, right?
Yeah, they don't even watch the shirts anymore, do they? I mean,
why? Who's going to know?
I know. The only podcast in water where there's a dress code. I think that should be.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
It's a new tagline, right? So, no, I think this is interesting. It's a new dynamic to the investment community. Like I said, I saw the one with the water footprint assessment tool recently on Indiegogo. Personally, on social media, I'm always, because of various interests and those damn cookies, I'm always being targeted to help crowdfund various bicycle helmets or new carbon fiber bikes, which I think is interesting. But talk to me about scale. What sort of scale? Because if you're talking about the enormous infrastructure projects needed, often we've talked about the widgets and the sensors. How big can the investments you can raise from the platform? What's the limit on this thing?
I'll talk scale on a number of fronts here. Look, we're broadening what we consider a water innovation. Plant-based protein, we believe, is a water investment. Broadly, what we look for is any company that's producing a product or a service that's either helping the water world use water more efficiently or helping to protect it. So sustainable materials, less plastics in the world, sustainable farming, sustainable regenerative agriculture. Looking at pumps and moving water investing beyond just the traditional pumping in pipes sort of thing. Either it's data or desal or stormwater or plastic mitigation. These are all we consider a water investment, number one. So the scale there is very apparent as to the types of offerings that we're seeking to put up. Second, the most a company can raise, we can conduct two types of raises on our site. One is a raise called under regulation CF, which allows a company to raise up to $1,070,000 from both accredited and non-accredited investors. And then the second type of raise we can conduct is it's called Reg D 506C, which allows for unlimited funds to be raised, but only from accredited investors. So, our goal at WaterWorks is to, at any point in time, have 15 to 20 different types of offerings on our site. But what that starts to build is a community of investors that begin to, that begin to help finance water innovations around the country.
This is the community in the Army, right? Sorry, Will.
With every click, with every look, with every social media follow, with every email, we're aggregating a community that cares about water innovation and putting investment opportunities in front of them.
And Lon, Tom and I, we managed to weave in our affection for water sports throughout the season here. And we're not going to leave you out of this conversation. So how was your fishing season? Just kind of a high level recap before we close.
I'm a fly fisherman. So, again, I can go out on the streams in a very socially distant way. In fact, that's what I prefer. Most fly fishermen do. So it was not interrupted in any way, shape, or form. So,
all right, good. So
northern Michigan and some of the western North Carolina streams up in the mountains.
So no more chicken dinners, but fish dinners.
I'm a catch and release man, so it's mostly a power.
Good. I always thought you were very humane, so that's good.
So a lot of power bars and waking up early and having coffee on the side of the stream and hitting the river.
Nice.
Okay, what a nice way to close. Fly fishing on the stream, talking about it on the stream. There's some kind of beautiful loop we've got there. But Lon, we're at the 30-minute mark, so I want to thank you for your time. Congratulations on the launch so far, and wishing you best of luck continuing to spread the word on the online investment and community and army you're building. So thanks for your time. We hope everyone's enjoyed it, and make sure you like and subscribe the videos, and also share amongst your friends and colleagues. Will, final comments from you, if you will.
I don't think I'll ever eat chicken again after this one. But on a serious note, well, that was serious, but on a more serious note, I'm really excited about what you're doing. It fits into two big trends, disruptive, transformative, and very positive. So best of luck.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Will. And look to the listeners today, give us a look, waterworksfund.com. Water can't wait. We can't wait, not for banks or governments or philanthropy. There are technologies and innovations out there, and we're seeking to build a community to push those innovations forward. And so please take a look and consider joining us.
Fantastic. Great. Well, Lon, thanks for your time, and all the best.